I'll call to order this budget meeting of the Regents of the University of Minnesota. Just a little bit, a couple of housekeeping items. Regent Johnson is out of the country on a long-planned trip and cannot be with us. Regent Simmons and Regent McMillan should be on the phone. Are you there?
Yes. Regent
Simmons here. I'm here as well.
All right, good
Chair
enough.
Allen.
Good enough. I think what we'd like to do is, have a formal motion first and a second, and then I'll invite the President to speak, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So the one item before us today is the operating budget for action. Is there a motion regarding the operating budget? Regent Frobenius.
Mr. Chair, I move the adoption of the provisional operational budget.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Seconded Regent Cohen. All right. Mr. President, would you like to make some opening remarks?
Chair Allen, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, we don't plan to represent the budget that we shared with you last month, although that full presentation and all the charts and tables are readily available if you want to consult them once again. I'd like to make a few brief opening remarks. They may not be as brief as I'd like them to be, but this is my last chance. This is my last chance, and one of my very best friends on the way to this meeting said, "Don't leave anything on the field." And
I have a copy of his notes.
And as is my usual custom, I try not to leave anything on the field. I'd like to begin where I left off earlier this month, and that is with a few important summary conclusions that I think are very important to understand this provisional budget. This is a worst-case budget. It actually cuts as deeply as the proposal that was vetoed by the governor of the state of Minnesota. But I think it's really important to understand this budget in the context of the university's unique role and responsibilities in Minnesota. So let me make three primary points, and then I'd like to make a few other observations. The first primary point is one that I've made repeatedly in public and before this board, and that is the cuts proposed by the legislature are simply too deep. This proposed reduction of $242 million from the university's forecast base in this biennium follows a $193 million two-year reduction in the current biennium, taking the university's appropriation to lower than 19 our freshmen were entering kindergarten. These cuts are disproportionately large for the university and for public higher education in relationship to the state's budget challenge, especially given the university's extraordinary return on state investment. I've actually looked at state comparisons. That is, what are other states doing to their public systems of higher education? And when it comes to annual reductions in state support, we are in the lowest 40% of states in terms of annual reductions to our base budget in the past 5 years, and if we model what is on the table for the next 2 years, we'll be in the bottom 20%. I don't think that's the kind of trend we should expect in the state of Minnesota. The budget challenge, furthermore, is far bigger than our proportional representation in the state budget. It's 2.5 times larger than the cut would be if we simply reduced it in proportion to the state's role in Minnesota's overall budget. My second point is the university is clearly doing its part to address the state's budget challenge. I've been talking about it for 2 years. We've done so by setting tough priorities at the unit level and at the all-university level. We've been aggressive in reducing costs. We've increased non-state revenues at accelerated rates, and we have worked very hard to protect our students. We have continued to resolve these budget challenges as we have in the past, taking 2/3 of the solution through reduced costs, program reductions, deferred investments, and only 1/3 of the pain through revenue increases, largely tuition. And we have done our very best to mitigate those tuition increases through a very aggressive scholarship award strategies. Faculty and staff, again, are facing the prospect of a salary and wage freeze subject to collective bargaining, as well as additional responsibility for fringe benefit costs. I might add, we're going to do what we can to protect lower-income people with respect to these fringe benefit cost increases. Reductions to the programs and support units of the University of Minnesota have been targeted and differential. In the academic area, they've ranged from 0 to 6%, and with respect to support units, largely administrative units, the reductions range from 2 to 55%. Once again, as we have done year after year, we've cut administration more than academic programs to balance the university's budget. The third conclusion is the university is doing its part to protect students and families from the brunt of these state budget reductions. Given the magnitude of the state cuts we face, the proposed 5% tuition increase for undergraduates, I believe, is modest and reasonable. This is resident undergraduate students. The cost of attendance will even be lower due to really very prudent stewardship. The cost of attendance, and that includes room, board, books, will be just 4% next year. And when you add in the scholarship commitments that we've been able to raise over the last few years, the net cost increase will be considerably less, and I think the university can be justifiably proud of its commitment to scholarships and affordable access. This is a balanced budget. There's no smoke and mirrors. We're not kicking the can down the road. As I said, this takes us back to 1998 levels of state support. Our employees continue to sacrifice, set priorities, and make difficult decisions in order to ensure that the university is well positioned to protect essential jobs and the university's quality and services despite these reductions. The university has achieved a very high level of increased efficiency and productivity, thanks to an extraordinary workforce. And I'd like to share just a few thoughts with you. There are a lot of statistics flying around right now, and many of them are not anchored in reality. The total employee headcount is up 6.9% from the period of fiscal 01, that is 2001, to fiscal 10. This is the most conservative number we can use to divide into productivity and give you a sense of the university's progress. State appropriation over this period per full-year equivalent student is down 11.5%. FYE students per employee up 11.9%. Degrees per employee up 31.8%. Sponsored research funding per employee up 50.2%. In any context that I could imagine, this record represents a very significant gain in productivity. Thanks to your strong support as Regents and the creativity and discipline of the university's senior leadership team and the faculty and staff of this great university system, during my term as president from FY03 through the present, the growth of the university's employee headcount is even slower, 1.6% or less than 0.2% per year. When you look at that in relationship to university increased expenditures, we have increased the growth of the university's non-state budget 20 times faster than we have increased the employees of the University of Minnesota. During this period, we've recruited more and better prepared students, improved the student experience through an all-university honors program, first-year experience programs, and many other initiatives, retained and graduated those students in higher numbers, raised unprecedented private support for scholarships, fellowships, and the university's academic mission, grown its research enterprise to garner record levels of federal and non-state support, transformed the university's technology commercialization processes, which has helped to create at least 14 new companies in the past 2 years, managed existing resources in order to sustain this momentum despite 3 separate historically deep budget cuts. I want to end or close my remarks by drawing your attention to the big announcement last week. The university last week joined 59 other centers across the country with a new clinical and translational science award. It was a $51 million award. The university got more than 25% of the total federal allocation. I want to acknowledge the incredible amount of work of close to 175 faculty, staff, administrators, including professional and administrative employees, civil service, and union employees, involved in this effort to write, compete for, and now execute the terms of this highly sought-after grant. Each year, NIH invests nearly $30 billion as a fuel for the discovery that is the hallmark of U.S. academic health sciences work. Of that, they've dedicated about $2.5 billion over the next 5 years, over the past 5 years and the next 5 years, to these clinical and translational science awards. Being part of this consortium means we are better positioned to be a leader in moving health sciences discoveries more efficiently into improving health of our families and communities. This grant recognizes the investment our state and our university has made in our clinical research structure. It supports so many things that are necessary to move promising ideas into strategies that prevent and treat human disease. The people who will do this work and conduct this enterprise are largely not faculty, and they are all advancing and administering part of this very important work. Without their contributions, we would not be among the leading institutions in this country within the CTSA program. Clearly, with minimal state investment and very modest growth in our employee base, the university has done an exceptional job of controlling costs, increasing productivity, setting very difficult priorities that have driven many people out into the street in protest. We've grown our revenue, and we've improved results for students in the state. Unfortunately, today Minnesota is among the leading states in the nation in reducing funding for higher education. I want to just make a couple of concluding comments. This, in my judgment, is one of my most disappointing acts. I have the unenviable position of presenting to you what I consider to be a dismal budget. I regret that I've had the responsibility for the third time in 9 years for presenting a budget to address deep state reductions to the university's budget. I fervently hope our state leaders will improve this budget to better protect the university's quality, reduce its impact on students and families, and create future opportunities like the inspiring CTSA grant that is so important to the long-term future of the university. More support from the state is urgently needed, and I recognize, and I've been telling people for more than 2 years, we have to be a part of the state solution in balancing this very deep budget gap. I recommend the board adopt this provisional budget as presented so that the university can preserve important services and obligations during this fiscal year. The legislature to reduce the deep proposed cuts to the university's budget for 2012 and 2013. I look forward to a robust discussion about my remarks and the budget before you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first want to check to be sure our regents on the phone were able to hear that all right. Regent McMillan, Regent Simmons?
I heard it all, thank you.
Regent Simmons?
This is Regent Simmons? Yes.
And I know,
thank you very
Regent
much.
Simmons, you have a regrettable time constraint here. Do you have any comments you want to make to begin the discussion?
Thank you, Chair Allen. I very much appreciate it. President Brunex, thank you so much for the points you just made that emphasize the importance of approving this budget today. The development of this budget has been a painful and painstaking task, but it is based on principles that respect people as well as the university's commitments and our mission. I have not heard, nor am I able to offer a better option in the face of this severe cut in states' financial support. We must have an approved budget to operate this university and fulfill our commitments to our students, our faculty and employees, those who fund us through philanthropic gifts and our research grants, and most certainly to fulfill our commitment to the people of Minnesota. I support this budget and will vote yes today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The floor is open for questions, and I will try to watch or try to sense when we are beginning to repeat too much. Try to sense also when I think we all have our minds made up and are ready to vote. And I'll try to make the right comments at that time. But at the moment, the floor is open for discussion. Regent Hung and Regent Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I think with the budget the way it is, that we really don't have that many options, but I still empathize with the economic hardships that many university employees face. I have two questions and points I would like to make. I would like to understand, based on some of the budget hearing stories, that whether or not we are market competitive in terms of total compensation for our lowest paid employees. And I would also like to encourage the administration, as we restructure health care benefits, that we take into consideration how we're impacting the lowest paid workers.
Good questions, thank you. Mr. President, would you like to take a crack at that?
Yeah, Chair Allen, Regent Hung, we regularly, every year, benchmark the university's employees against comparable employee groups in higher education, that is, relative to our peer groups in higher education. And that analysis actually goes right down to the peer groups that are constructed for each of our campuses. This campus has a different peer group than, for example, the University of Minnesota Morris. Second thing we do is, with comparable occupations, we benchmark ourselves against the external market, the private marketplace, as well as the public marketplace. I won't comment about the faculty compensation and academic employee compensation statistics. You've had those presentations recently, I believe, in the Faculty Staff Student Affairs Committee. But I will say that our compensation for comparable jobs for our lowest paid employees is very, very competitive and comparable to peer institutions and with respect to the private marketplace. And we are taking extraordinary action, and I think it's the right thing to do, to protect lower paid employees from increased premium costs related to restructuring our health care plan. I asked our people to find $15 million roughly in health care savings per year going forward, and they produced that plan. But I also indicated that I did not want to price health care out of reach of our lowest paid employees. I think if you want a great workforce, you've got to protect their health care at the same time.
It's a good question and a good answer. I think it is one that we need to keep our eye on and need to be sure we do understand what those competitive studies show. So, good question. Thank you very much. Other discussion? Regent Cohen, yes.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I very much support this budget and commend the administration for making some very difficult decisions, yet I believe very fair and principled. As President Brunix mentioned, costs have been controlled, a third pay freeze in 10 years, dependent on collective bargaining. I do worry about our competitiveness with our faculty and staff, and as the salaries and benefits are going down. We have had increased productivity. Student enrollment, which is one of our major missions, is up close to 20% in the 10 years. Degrees conferred are up 35%. Historic research gains have been made, and private donations, both of which are essential to the excellence of the university. I believe that we are fulfilling our mission to the people of the state of Minnesota. We are being responsible, and I hope for the future we will get more state help so we can protect even further the excellence and the importance of the University of Minnesota. Thank you.
Seeing no hands at the moment. John, Regent Frobenius.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I guess I got two sets of comments. And if Regent Simmons would not have made the comments she made, my comments would have been very similar. I think we have put together best we can under these circumstances, and I don't have a better thing to suggest. So I do support passing this provisional budget as it is recommended to us. Particularly troubled with one statement President Brunix made that reminds us that the cuts to University of Minnesota are 2.5 times larger than the drop in the state's budget. That's a significant disproportionate share that we're being asked. So I don't have any better solutions for the current situation, and I think we must support this budget. When we pass this budget, hopefully the state will be able to do a bit more. and the state does need to do more. And I think there are several things that we as a university need to be doing as we get into this. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of those. First, before I say these, I want to say that President Brunix has done a great job leading us through these periods of time. Some of the productivity comments that he made I think are very important to us, and the university has advanced significantly. There is, I hate to use the term new normal, but there is a new normal which we must recognize and live with. We're going to see this for a period of time. This is not going to be a quick recovery. I think that requires us to find a way to provide a greater focus of the University of Minnesota beyond the achievements and activities we've taken today. I don't want targets and productivity to be brought up in a last-minute discussion of a budget that are sort of used to make an argument. They're legitimate and they're justifiable, but they need to be intentional. The organization needs to set some productivity targets for itself. A lot of people say productivity and education is an oxymoron. Not sure that's accurate. So I think that we need to become intentional about some of the productivity goals we have for the organization. I think we need to analyze greater the cost and revenue by college or by major product line or whatever the best practice we can find both within higher education and outside of higher education that will modify the business model of the University of Minnesota to clarify decision-making and incentives both between board and management. And then we need to reanalyze how we can do everything differently in this new normal. These are serious times. We need this university to thrive in the difficult times that may be ahead of us. I think it can. I refuse to use the word innovation, by the way, when I make this kind of a speech, because I've learned over the years innovation is a term used by people that don't have the foggiest idea what to suggest. But I do believe that we need to adapt ourselves to the new normal in the manners and ways that I've suggested, and that needs to be our commitment if the state is willing to make a commitment to do something along the lines to improve our situation from the current situation.
Thank you very much. Regent Larson.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I just have a few comments, and this is directed to the people of the state of Minnesota. We are disinvesting in higher education. And one of the reasons that this state has been so successful comparatively over the years is because of the fact that we did invest heavily historically. Today, we're in the bottom half. That is unsustainable for our culture and the future of our society and economy. I don't think we have any alternative given what's been dealt to us. Therefore, I will support this budget as much as I dislike it. And I believe that for the future, again, I'm directing this to the citizens of this state. We must make a priority on higher education and reinvest more significantly than we are today, or our society, our culture, and our economy is heading for trouble. Thank you.
Are there other comments or questions? I'm sensing Regent
Chair
Beeson.
Allen?
Yes, Regent McMillan and then Regent Beeson.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I want to echo Regent Larson's disinvestment commentary. I share that sense and that belief as well, and would direct my comments to the same place. I can't say it any better than he did, so I won't. And I will support this budget, and I come at that support only from the following perspective, that it is the least objectionable of a number of poor choices. The situation we're in leaves us with no easy and several bad choices, tough decisions. but we need to move forward. We have to be fiscally responsible. We have to put a balanced budget out here, and from that perspective, I support this. I don't like it, but I will vote to support its adoption.
Regent Beeson and then Regent Spigot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last meeting, Regent Spigot talked a little bit about the value proposition. I want to go back to that. That's a big part of our job. We're approving a budget. We're looking at costs. We're looking at revenues. But at the end of the day, we're the ones responsible for assessing whether we have the value proposition for employees, for faculty, and for students who are in place. And I think that proposition survives this budget. But the proposition gets stressed as our costs increase higher than our families or higher than our employees' ability to handle those. So the bad news is that we're going to have to continue to reduce costs even further, find new ways. And it may be that there's organizational change, more organizational change we have to make. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. I'm against sort of the across-the-board layoffs of low-cost employees and taking out our most productive employees. So I'm really against the sort of unilateral cut approach. But we're going to the new normal will be that our costs will be, reduction efforts will be forever, and we're going to have to continue to think about how we're going to do that. I'd like to thank the President for this budget. I think it's a good budget. It's the right thing to do for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Spigot.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I sit here and I hear Regent Frobenius and Regent Beeson speak, and they give me great hope, and I mean that very sincerely. When you speak about the new normal and the changes that are necessary, when you speak about not being across the board and prioritizing, we can't be everything to everybody. We just can't be, folks. And the time has come and has passed that the university can't be everything to everybody. Both of you give me great hope as to what will take place in the future. Having said that, I will tell you that I'm not just a maverick change agent sitting here today. I have spoken in the past 2 months to numerous large contributors to the university, to ex-administrators, to professors, to ex-regents, more than one, that have showed great frustration with the university's budget and budget processing. I believe in my heart of hearts, as I've said before, that this University of Minnesota education is a tremendous value for our students. It is a great value at the cost it is right now. And following through with our conversation of yesterday, President Brunix, you have been wonderful for this state and for this university. And I mean that extremely sincerely. As a friend, as a regent, you have been wonderful for the university. You led us in a very, very good direction. But I don't think we're doing enough, folks. President, I'm not sure exactly where you get your information regarding what's happening in other states, but you know, I went to the internet. It's pretty easy to do, and I look at Michigan. As I was telling Regent Beeson just before we walked in here, I could supplant or put in Michigan for Minnesota in the news releases and the words that are saying, you know, economic development, loss of economic, state going down the tubes, race to the bottom. I could put in Texas, I could put in California, looking at $1.4 billion in reductions, Wisconsin, $250 million. I'm not sure that Minnesota is in any different situation of a reality than the other states are. In the past, the performance measures, President, that you have brought to us, I think have been very, very good and improving. The better students we have coming here to the state, the retention and the graduation rates, which have increased dramatically. You know, you and I have talked over the last 10 years when I was in a different spot and you were in your position just coming in as to those performance measures which needed to be met. They've improved, and to that I thank you, and the state should thank you. The mission to research. The enhancement of that has been great. But the reality is, folks, we have to make some choices that are tough, and we have to face those consequences. And there's no place that I know of that has a pension program like the University of Minnesota. Now, I know we're looking at changing it for new hirees. I recognize that. I recognize there's a grandfathering, and we're going to change for new hirees. But that exists no place, that pension program that I'm aware of, private or public sector. I look at our numbers are a little bit different, Mr. President. You said 6% increase. My numbers given to me earlier this year by Fitz are more like 11% increase. It's not enough to quibble about. But administration has grown rather dramatically. And I know just enough about this place, having been in enough of our schools, to recognize that there is significant reductions that could be made. Significant. You know, I don't know why we have in every school an HR unit, why we have in every school we have a fundraising unit, by every school we have a communications unit. I don't know that, and I'm not sure we should. I don't know why we have 7 government relations persons. I don't, and these aren't people on the low end, Regent Hung, of the financial dollar remuneration that we're talking about here. It's very significant numbers and very significant costs. I have failed. I'm going to tell you this as a new regent. Now, some of it I'll chalk up to being a rookie, not knowing the process. This budget process started long before I got here, I assume. And I have failed in my ability to either be a change agent or to move ahead with making this budget more prudent, more efficient, and more realistic of what the defining reality of the individual that at our last meeting, President Brunix, you quoted Belfry, or I forget who the guy's name was, but it was defined and recognized reality. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure we're doing that to the extent we should. I will not fail in the 2013 budget, Mr. Chairman.
Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to restate anything, so I'll try to take it in a little different direction. First of all, Mr. President, I do want to say that I think this is a very honest budget. I think you have put together a budget that is more honest than many we see, and there aren't smoke and mirrors around it. And I think that honesty in terms of how it's put forth is really important for the state. I think it's important for the university. And I think it's important from different directions, and so I just wanted to say thank you for that. I also appreciate very strongly that this is not an across the board cut kind of approach. I think that is extremely short-sighted, and this does not do that. And so I just wanted to tell you I personally appreciate the more targeted and differential approach that you've taken in terms of investment, but also in terms of the pulling back where it's necessary. I'm sorry, I have a cold, so I'm having trouble with my voice a little bit. There are some concerns, though, I do have. One is that as a new regent, you come into the budget process when the budget is pretty well along the way. And, I've poured through the documents. I think I've done a pretty good job of assessing where things are at. I look forward to getting to know the budget even more going forward. It is certainly a complex budget. It's certainly a challenging budget, and it certainly is a budget where I see tremendous opportunity going forward. One of the things that I've been focused on is the tuition, and I don't think I'll need to address some of the efficiency issues or the productivity issues, but I just wanted to address the tuition side of things. The relationship between tuition and legislative appropriations is often they're tied together. And I was looking at some of the information that we got in our budget prepping, the financial overview, and I just don't see the correlation as strongly as it's portrayed. We can go back to 98, we can go back to 2002, where there was a $14 million additional state funding, yet there was a 14% tuition increase. 2002 to 3, there was a $12 million pulling back, and yet there was a 16% tuition increase. And so I used the information that we got, and I imported the tuition increases that are 2 pages later, and the correlation just isn't that strong. And so it tells me that there's greater opportunity, I think, for assessing how we approach the tuition side of things. Then it's not as simple as just what the legislature gives and what they don't give. Having said that, the difficulty I have in the tuition is when you look at the value that I think is exactly right. I think there is great value in the University of Minnesota to the students, to the state, dramatically. When you look at that economic impact study, I think that was a fantastic study, and I hope that we use that more broadly and more in a more targeted way, because I think there's a lot of information there that the public just simply doesn't know about the U, in terms of the U's impact on this state, in terms of jobs. That jobs impact is significant. But when I look at the value and the tuition value, it seems to me that what I'm missing is the strategy. And it seems like the tuition we set, when I look at this chart, is more based on how we line up budget numbers and how we solve problems than it is about the strategy. And that strategy is important to me, because that, to me, is, as a member of the Board of Regents, I'm supposed to be on the policy side of things, staying on the strategy side of things, not getting in the middle of the micromanaging, which I can appreciate the difference. But then I look forward to embarking upon a strategy around tuition, so that we know what we're trying to get to, what value we think is appropriate, and then we can embark upon the steps that it takes to get there. Maybe that's been done, but I haven't seen the strategy piece of it. And I know sometimes that's really difficult when you get thrown curveballs like we've been throwing for the past 4, 5, 6 years. I get that. The curveballs are hard. But I'm looking forward to how we move forward as a board, and as how I move forward as a member of this board, in terms of assessing the strategic positioning and direction that we could take, and whether it's tuition or Regent Frobenius, I think you spoke really, really well about some of the productivity strategies. That's our role, and that's a role that I look forward to participating in. What is the strategy for administration? Do we have a 5% reduction or a 10% increase? What do we want to do? What is the strategy around it? Not what are we going to do to solve a budget difference. The biggest difficulty I have in the tuition side of things is the use of the stimulus funds. And I mentioned it last year. We used one-time stimulus funds to offset a tuition increase in the form of a scholarship. Now, this is different than the Promise Scholarship. I support the Promise Scholarship. Regent Swigum and I differ very much on that. I think that those have created a tremendous leverage opportunity and value for the U. What I'm talking about is the stimulus piece of the scholarship. When we agreed to do that, we effectively created a situation for a huge number of students whereby they are not going to just have a 5% increase. They're going to see a significant increase above and beyond that due to the loss of those stimulus funds. And I think sometimes the use of one-time money in that way is just unfortunate. And the impact to the students, I think, it will be said that, they knew it. Well, knowing it and being aware of it and being ready for it are very different things, and I know you know that. The other difficulty I have with the use of the stimulus money is that, we talk a lot about the autonomy of the U. And when the legislature tells us that we can't do or that they want us to do a 4.5% tuition cap, we tell them, you know what, stay out of our business. We're going to take care of what our tuition is. You need to make sure that you're not stepping on our authority. Yet, with this tuition or this stimulus money, the agreement was we're going to give you the stimulus money if you use it in a certain way. And we agreed to do that. So I think we need to have a consistent message of autonomy, if that's the message we have, which I believe it's a message we should have. And I think it's just unfortunate that a number of students are going to be seeing a significant increase above and beyond the 5% that is being stated. Lastly, I'll say this. I'm just thrilled to be a member of this board. I know that I have taken and will take a couple of votes where members are going to, well, are you just a no vote? I will tell you, I'm not just a no vote. I am somebody who absolutely believes in the University of Minnesota, somebody who absolutely believes that the university plays a significant positive role in our state. But I wasn't sent here to be a no vote, and I wasn't sent here to be a yes vote. I was sent here to be somebody who evaluates the university and moves it forward in the way that I feel is in the best interests of the alumni, of the students, of the faculty, and of the state. We're going to disagree on some things. We're going to agree on some things, and I think that's a good, healthy thing for a board. I think it's very good to have differences of opinion. I think it's very good to have people asking questions. I think it's very good to have other people saying, "What the heck are you doing?" I think those are all good things. And I think it's important for the state, and I think it's important for the people at the U to also understand that those differences of opinion are healthy on this board. So, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to a positive move forward as we get intentional about the strategies around tuition, strategies around how we create greater opportunity here at the U and in the state. I look forward to creative solutions to very difficult and challenging problems that I know that we're not just facing today. We're going to face them for a number of years going forward. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not just a no vote. I will be today. I want to be a participant in making this place as good as I know it is and as good as I know it can be, and I look forward to that opportunity going forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, and then Regent Ramirez.
Yeah, Chair Allen, Regent Broad, I want to address your last comment because I want, as I leave here and try to leave everything on the field today, I want to tell you what my personal philosophy is about what you've just said. From the very first day I was appointed interim president, I told members of the board they should vote their conscience. Because by voting their conscience, you make us all better, to be honest with you. Challenge all of us to reach higher and do the right thing. The worst thing that can happen to a board is the feeling of obligation that they just have to support the president no matter what. And so I don't have a problem with that. I just want you and Regent Sviggum to know that as I leave my post in a few days. The problem with numbers, I'm reminded what H.L. Mencken said one time, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, so you have to really watch the numbers you're using. And the problem with reporting, and I think when you dig into these issues that you're talking about, and I would urge you to continue to do so as the board has done, I don't think there's an institutional system in higher education that measures more and benchmarks more than the University of Minnesota. And I challenge you to find a few. There probably are some that I don't know about. But when you look at the numbers of employees, FY10, that is 2009-10 figures. Those are the latest figures. And so the budget cuts, like, for example, the governor's on allotment of $50 million is not fully reflected in those numbers yet. And you will see decline in numbers. Second thing I would say is we have something called professional and academic. It was started in the 1980s. And if you look at this so-called administrative category, you'll see some fairly large numbers, and you cited those. But you should take a look at what people do. What they do is even more important than the title they hold. I've asked some time ago that this category be restructured so it's much more functional in describing what people actually do. And if you partition those people out, for example, people who will be active on the CTSA grant are really driving a research agenda. They're not people with green eye shades just moving paper around. These people are really driving a research agenda. Many of them are directing labs, and they're principal investigators of major longitudinal and cross-sectional studies here at the university. So I think we need to be careful. And the tuition numbers you talked about, the 2002, actually the decision was made in 2002 because we had a $185 million two-year budget cut in 3 and 4, and so the tuition was adopted one year and took effect the following year in the assessment of our students. So I think one of the things we have to be really careful of when you dig into these numbers to make sure we're looking at some of the same things. Let me just talk about the stimulus money. If this board had complete freedom, I suspect, and if the administration had complete freedom in how to invest that money, we wouldn't have done it that way, to be honest with you. But this came down to the states as a federal mandate. It was a federal statute that argued that the money should be disproportionately used. That is, the money to higher education should be disproportionately used to mitigate the rising cost of higher education during a period of extreme economic challenge and difficulty. The state then acted, as you rightly pointed out, and put its own mandates in effect. But given the force of federal law and backed up by state law, I think it was a prudent and appropriate thing to do what we did under the circumstances. But left to our own priority setting, completely to our own priority setting, we probably would have mixed those numbers in different ways. Finally, the impact on students is real, but I would say with the University of Minnesota Promise Scholarship, other need-based scholarships, likely increases in the state grant program, something that was put into effect by the Congress called the Hope Tax Credit, which provides a tax credit to middle-income families of $2,500 a year up to $10,000 for an undergraduate student, regardless of state of residence. You know, our scholarship is for Minnesota residents, but the Hope Tax Credit can be taken advantage by families in Illinois or any other state. So I think students are really much better protected than may appear. And students do gain and lose money all the time, you know, in the form of scholarships, and we told all of our students that, and the increases are real, and there's no question about it. But I do think this increase is moderate, and I've got to tell you, I don't see in this new normal environment being able to push all the costs of students and families that are the result of economic difficulties in our society or the rising cost of higher education or the operation of the university more broadly. And that's why we push long-term strategies to drive down costs. And I urge you to read the report that we sent to you last week. It's a good report. It takes a long-term view. It can be better. I mean, this whole operation should be about, universities should be about getting better every day. Good enough is not good enough, as they say in the service industry, and I think it certainly applies to us. But those are just a few thoughts and reflections. I deeply appreciate your comments and appreciate the opportunity to have this brief moment to respond to them.
I just want to add one comment about tuition, and I don't mean it to diminish the concerns that have been expressed about tuition, because tuition for most people is a here and now. What am I paying this year? What's happening next year? And what's happening to me, because I may not be average. But I think it is important to point out that after gift and grant aid, and after adjusting for inflation, our tuition over the past 10 years for the average student, undergraduate, resident student, has gone up 1.2% a year. Regent Ramirez.
Thank you, Chair Allen. When I hear the President's comments that the proposal before us and the state's proposal would push levels of state support down to 1998, then I reflect on the number of students we have, the technology needs we have, the infrastructure costs that we have are all 2011 costs and represent an increase in students, an increase in technology, and some increase in infrastructure costs and maintenance and things with the amount of years that have been passed. This seems to be not too unlike my own life when I imagine if I were living on a budget from 1998. I've had 2 kids in the meantime, so my costs have gone up. I've had to have a bigger place. I have to feed more people. I have to do more, and I'm not earning what I earned in 1998 when I had a part-time job and I was in college. I imagine if I tried to do that and wrote it all out in a, 80-page document, it might show up and look a little bit like this, which is it would look very hard. And it wouldn't look like the things I got to do in 1998 I wouldn't be able to do in 2011 because I was making choices to invest in my children and not just in myself. So I look at this budget and think about the number of competing interests that you have, and I appreciate the attention you've given to some differential cuts and to some differential investments. And I see investments in student scholarships, I see investment in student mental health services, I see commitments to the University of Minnesota Morris American Indian tuition waiver. I see those kind of things reflected in here, and I'm reminded of really some of the strength and resiliency that we have in our university community, and we're testing it, and it's been tested for the last 10 years, and I think it's reaching its limits, but I see a responsible budget here. I'm a little dismayed. I don't see that many young people in the audience, and that reminds me that that's part of my role also on the Board of Regents to speak up. I see Mr. Omari and Mr. Pape, two of our student reps to the board who are here, but driving in, I saw the sign that said orientation parking, turn left, and I thought, oh, well, our students on campus are at orientation. We have a very excited freshman class waiting to come in. I spent Friday night at a graduation party with a family of a student who's enrolling at UMD. And she's super excited, and the family was very excited, and word got out that I was a regent, and so then they wanted to chat a little bit, and I said, it's not good. I said, we're voting on this budget on Monday, and it's not good, but we need you. We need students, we need employees here, and I tried to take away just a little bit of her excitement and enthusiasm still for the university, because reading through an 80-page document like this and being in an environment where we're all forced to make these difficult choices can be a little bit daunting. But I hope that we as a board are still remembering some of the creativity, some of the excitement that's on our campus, and that when these students are coming in, I'm absolutely convinced that they are the solution to what we're facing. And we bring them in here, we educate them, we send them out, they get good jobs, we get the state back on track. I think we're absolutely the key to doing that. So thank you, Mr. President.
Strikes me we have the issues well stated on the table, and Regents seem to be at the point where they know how they want to vote on this. Are you ready for the vote? If so, all in favor of the motion to approve the budget, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
2 noes, and that concludes the business of today. I just want to finish up with a couple of comments. Since this is the President's last formal meeting, I'm sure he'll have a lot to do yet in the next few days, but this is his last formal meeting. Mr. President, I remember a few months ago you were worried about, once you made the announcement, were you going to be a lame duck president? I think I said 2 things at that time. Number 1, I can't see you being a very good patient as a lame duck, and you weren't. Number 2, and more importantly, I said we had a huge number of big issues on the table, and there wasn't going to be time for you to be a lame duck or for us to afford one. I want to compliment you on the way you have finished up in great style and with great dedication in these last few months. You have done wonders, and you haven't solved all of our problems, surprisingly. We will have some left over. But at the same time, you have done a great and all of you know that the President is very fond of quotes, and I thought the appropriate quote that he might want to hear today is one from Martin Luther King. It was, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. With that, we are adjourned.